Hey, Chad.
Hey Mara, how's it going?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us here.
I'm
I'm
glad I can
really,
be here.
yeah, really excited to have you here. I'm using this third-party app to allow us to do this model of like interview here. So I hope we're actually in that Facebook page right now. So if anyone is joining, please say hi, comment, so that we know people are here. My name is Mara, and I'm the owner of Groove and Paws Dog Walking here in Mount Pleasant. And I'm so excited to have Chad from Canine Revolution Dog Training come here and give us so much valuable information. Everything from what you need to know when you first bring home a puppy or adopt a dog to the most common behavioral issues that we all face as pet parents. So again, thank you so much for being here. And what we're going to do is just kind of do a question and answer session here. And of course, leave room for any questions that anyone might have if we have anyone join live. If not, Chad has been super awesome to welcome any emails or direct Facebook comments or messages to their Facebook page. So without further ado, oh, I see someone's on here. I can't see who it is, but say hi in the comments so we know you're here. This is exciting. Okay, so we're going to start with introducing yourself. Tell us who you are and your experience with dog training.
All right, guys. So thanks for having me today, Mara. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you tonight, and always a good to meet up with the Groove and Paw team. So I grew up in. My name is Chad, by the way, Chad Singer. I grew up in Goose Creek, South Carolina, right up the road from Mount Pleasant. Great place. And then I went to the Citadel for college, and I actually graduated with a degree in civil and environmental engineering. However, I don't need that anymore, working with the dogs now. So ended up with that degree down there at the Citadel. That was a good time. Then I was commissioned into the Navy, and I served about 4.5 years in the Navy over in Southern California, specifically San Diego and Coronado. So that was a good time over there. But during the time that I spent in California, I brought my Doberman that I currently have into my life, into the life of my wife and I. And he was just a puppy at the time, could barely hold him in one hand. So cute
Oh my
little guy. And
gosh.
now he's about 95 pounds, all muscle. He's a beast. But so anyway,
Dang.
yeah, Bane, he's a good guy. So yeah, got him when he was a puppy. And I made some mistakes, when he was a puppy and raising him. And so he developed some, undesirable or unwanted behaviors. And so, in my quest to try and figure out, how to get rid of those behaviors and, help him through that and have him become the dog I always wanted, which was the dog that was, with me, working with me all the time, going with me everywhere. I came across dog training, and I trained dogs for over a year in, Southern California, and then moved back home when I got out of the Navy here to South Carolina and started up Canine Revolution Dog Training. So it's been an adventure and it's been a good time. But we're glad to be back in South Carolina. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's a little
that
bit
is
about me.
so awesome. And I personally met Bane, and he's like a little sergeant. I don't even know. He's like
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, how you've kind of gotten to this path. So diving more into, more about preparing for bringing home a puppy. What does a first-time dog owner need to prepare? Like, how do they need to? I think I'm skipping a question here. I'm sorry. What is
You're
the
good.
first piece of advice you would give someone who is about to bring home a puppy or a dog?
Okay, so first piece of advice for anybody thinking about getting, specifically a puppy, but even a dog that's more mature, is, set a goal for yourself and your dog, like a vision. Like how do I envision my dog and I? How is our relationship going to be? How are we going to interact with each other? You know, and some people, they just want a companion pet. Some people want an emotional support animal. Some people want to do protection training. Other people want to do some kind of sports training, therapy dog, service dog, all these different realms of stuff that we can do with our dogs, which are all good, but what specifically is your goal with your dog, right? And then how can I reach that goal? So obviously, if we get a puppy, we're going to take a step-by-step approach that's development that's, appropriate for the age of that puppy, right? We're not going to start, if it's a protection dog, we're not going to start protection training when they're, 10 weeks old with, some defense work.
Right.
Same thing with a companion pet. We're not going to take them on a, 5-mile hike on day one when they come home from the litter at 7 weeks old. It's just too much for the dog. So we're
Right.
going to take a step-by-step approach to meet our end goal or vision for the dog. So, to kind of recap that, set a goal for yourself, what you envision your relationship with your dog to be, and then we're going to plan out how we're going to achieve that goal. All right.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I like that. Having a goal, a vision for the type of relationship that you want with your
Yeah.
dog. That's
Yeah,
important.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, going on to question number 2. Does a first-time dog owner need to prepare their home before bringing home either a new puppy or a dog?
Yeah, absolutely. So, preparation is key in any realm. So, when we're bringing home a puppy, but this also applies to the more mature dog as well. First, we want to make sure that, we've got our goal in mind. All right, how are we going to achieve that goal? Well, the first step is to set up our home, right, to be structured for this new puppy or this new dog coming into the home. And that's because from day one, when that puppy comes into your house, they step foot in your house, they're already learning, right? They're observing what's going on around them. They're like, hey, I can get this human to, give me food every 2 seconds if I just look at them the right way. So,
Right. Those puppy
so,
eyes.
yep, exactly. So we want to set up our home, and typically for me and the dog owners that I work with, I recommend you start out with a kennel and a crate, okay? And this is especially important for puppies because we can use this to create a neutral area for the puppy or the dog, where they can be safe in and they're not going to get themselves in trouble in by eating your furniture or chewing your shoes or that kind of thing. So, kennel or crate is a good place to be doing that, and never use that for punishment. That should always be a good thing to the dog. We can play crate games with the dog where we're throwing food in. The dog gets to chase it in there. We get to call them back out, and we give them food when they come back out. And also, we can feed them their regular mealtime food and water in the crate, and it just helps to preserve that den mentality that all dogs have. So that's an important piece. Also, we want to have a leash and collar. And specifically for me, I like to have collars that the dog cannot slip out of, because I know back before I was a dog trainer, I've had dogs slip out of those flat collars. They twist their head just the right way and boom, they're gone.
Yep.
So I don't want that to happen. So I'll use like a slip lead type leash when they're puppies, and then as they get older, a different type of collar that they can't slip out of. Okay. And then the leash that I use is typically going to be 4, 5, or 6 feet long, just long enough where the puppy, has some room around me when I take them potty, but not so long where they're going to be, 20 feet away from me, and they're kind of out of my reach at that point.
Right.
So, we've got our kennel, leash, and collar up to this point. Okay. Then also we want to make sure that, we have some, what I call self-entertainment toys. Okay. And these are toys that I will give the dog when they're in the kennel and I have to leave them by themselves. And self-entertainment toys, typically, I like to choose ones that, are treat dispensing. So think about a Kong. If you go on Amazon, you can find a ton of treat dispensing toys. They've also got these ones I really like. They can like bobble over, so the dog can like nose it and they'll bobble over and spit out a treat. So that's a
Yep.
great toy to keep the dog occupied. And then I have interactive toys that I play with the dog with, and those can be, like your tennis balls, your chuck it balls, or tug toys. Okay, so these types of toys I will not allow the dog to have on their own. I will be interacting with the dog with these toys to build a relationship with them. Okay,
Mm.
so yeah, it's a good time right there. And then so we got the kennel, we got the leash, we got the collar, we got the self-entertainment toys, we have the self-interaction toys. Obviously, we need food and water bowls, right? So if we're bringing any new dog to our home, we want to have food and water bowls designated just for them. I'm not into letting the dog share the food and water bowls, right? We don't want to create any type of resource guarding or possessiveness. So we want each dog to know that they have their individual bowls, okay? So keep those in your mind, all right? With that said, we need food for our dog, all right? Whether that be a dry food, a raw food, a wet food, whatever you decide to feed your dog, plan ahead of time and have that at the house ready to go. All right. When you get a puppy, obviously puppies have special food designed for them because they need more calories than a mature dog. So keep that in mind.
Right.
And if you have any questions on that, speak with a local certified nutritionist that can help to guide you in the right direction in that realm. And then with that being said, the last thing I would say to be prepared for is be prepared to take your dog, for medical attention, right? So the vet,
Mm.
we need to prepare that dog to go to the vet, to be handled by the vet. And, last but not least, all the costs that are associated with that, and I
Yep.
can tell you from personal experience that those emergency vet visits, they pop up at the worst times, so
Yes.
always keep that in the back of your head and be prepared for that. So.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. I it's funny, kind of like the association that we may have with crates, or kennels, that it can kind of be like a negative association, like, oh, I feel bad for
Right.
putting my dog in the crate, when
Yeah.
it really provides, if you make it a good and positive place, dogs really enjoy that. Like, that's their
Oh
safe
yeah.
space.
Oh
And I
yeah.
like how you brought that up about, we have clients who work from home, so they're always with their dog. So
Hmm.
allowing them to go in their crate or kennel really gives them their own space, that it's
Exactly.
okay to have that space.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay. So what house rules should we establish?
Yeah. So house rules. Good question. The house rules are going to depend on the individual family. All right, and the individual owner. If it's not a family, but house rules are essentially right your management of your dog and the behaviors and manners that you want them to develop. All right. So obviously, my house rules may be different than yours or anyone that's watching. But there are a couple common ones that most people like to have, which could be, hey, no jumping up on people, no biting people, those little puppies, they want to come up and nibble on you. So no biting people. We want to start that from day one.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs that like to counter surf, so no counter surfing could be a good rule. Don't want you jumping up on that counter getting the peanut butter or
Yeah.
the chicken or whatever you have up there.
Yeah.
Other ones could be no leash pulling. All right.
Mm.
Coming when called. You start that from day one so that it becomes a habit for the dog. And then another good one could be staying when asked. Because those are pretty safety concerns for the dog, coming and staying. So,
Right.
take a look at your family and your goal for your dog, and then design your house rules to kind of go along with that. Obviously potty training is another big one. But yeah, you kind of come up with a list and then say, okay, how are we going to accomplish these goals and teach the dog how to behave with these goals in mind.
Right.
So yeah,
Hey, we have someone in the background chiming in. Is that a bird?
awesome. Yeah, someone hanging out with me. We got all kinds of wildlife out here. We got dogs, we got
No
owls, we got hawks, snakes,
kidding.
everything.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. How long does it typically take for a dog to become housebroken or potty trained?
So yeah, housebreaking or potty training depends pretty much on the owner, right? How consistent they're going to be, right? How much repetition they're going to put into good house manners versus bad house manners, right? But what it really comes down to is three main topics, and that is structure, supervision, and schedule. Okay, structure being how you structure your meal times, right? If I allow my puppy or dog to free feed,
Mm.
right? I have no idea when that puppy or dog is going to have to go to the bathroom. Okay, so that could lead to some problems, right? At the
Right.
most inconvenient time, that dog's going to, hey, pop a squat and go right in the middle of your living room. So, but also free feeding, if a dog always has food available to them, they're not going to be able to reason why. They need to listen to you because, hey, I already got my food. I don't need to listen to them for food. So keep that in mind as well when you're talking about structure. And also the house rules that we just discussed can fall into structure as well. Okay, supervision is always making sure that we can keep an eye on our dog. So my recommendation is until you complete potty training, don't allow your dog just to wander around the house because guess what? They can, within 1 second they can be in the next room before you even know it, and then you go in there and there's a nice big old surprise for you. and it's not going to be a nice one. It's going to be a nice sloppy one. You know what I'm saying? So, so keep that in mind. And what I recommend for supervision is, keep the dog in the kennel when you're not home or asleep, so that they're confined to their den, their neutral area, their good area. And then also, if you're moving around the house with your dog, keep the leash on them and just have them be with you. All right. So you're kind of layering into recall when you're doing this, and you're also layering into the dog maintaining position with you. Okay. But also, we're supervising them so they can't get themselves into trouble. And trouble in this case doesn't just mean, potty training, but it also means, hey, chewing on furniture or
Right.
grabbing your shoes or anything like that. Okay. Then the last one is schedule. Okay. So we want to be consistent with the potty times that we're allowing our dog to have. All right. So, and this is going to depend on the age of the dog. So obviously a 7-week-old puppy, is going to have to go to the bathroom pretty often, just because they're so small. Their bladders can't hold it that long,
Like every 2 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then we have a 4-month-old puppy that should be able to hold it for 4 hours or so, So
Right.
depending on the age of your puppy or dog is what you should look at as far as potty training schedule goes. Okay. But typically I recommend from the get-go, even if it's a mature dog, starting them out on a schedule, taking them out every 1 to 2 hours. That way you can go ahead and initiate consistency with them.
Right.
As you can tell, how long they're able to control themselves, then you kind of space that out, maybe 3 or 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever you need to do. All right.
Right.
And then when we get to nighttime, all right, so this is a big deal right here. With puppies, if they're going to potty in their kennel at nighttime, you are not going to potty train them until you get through that stage, right? So at nighttime with the very young puppies, I recommend you get up 1 to 2 times per night just to take them out real quick to allow them to relieve themselves. And the goal here is not to have them make any accidents anywhere in the house or in the kennel, right? Easier said than done, but if we can have 0 accidents, hey, we're making some good habits. And
Right.
then with that being said, before I go to bed, or before anyone goes to bed, I do recommend that you walk your dog for about 10 to 20 minutes. And what that's doing is, just flushing out their system. So, you think about you going out to do a run or go to the gym or something, you get about 15 minutes into your workout and you're like, hey, it's time to go. Same thing with your puppy, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
take them on a quick walk, let them flush out their system, and then put them in their kennel for the night, and then wake up once or twice during the night just to allow extra relief. But yeah, that's kind of how the potty training goes. But again, consistency is your best friend.
Yeah. A lot of commitment to
Oh
go.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a lot, and it's really
Yeah, definitely.
exciting getting a new puppy. Like, oh my gosh, so cute, so cuddly, this and that. But then you really start diving in and thinking about
Yeah.
it. I'm reliving this because I have a puppy, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, it's a lot.
Yep.
So
Oh
this
yeah.
is good stuff to know, because it's setting like that baseline of knowledge for us. Like, this is what you got to know. Just know
Yeah.
if you want a happy pup, this is
Mhm.
in a happy you,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Happy you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate cleaning up those messes if they make them.
Okay, moving on. Is it important that you get a dog that matches your lifestyle?
Oh yeah, definitely. So, you don't, if you're wanting to run with your dog, you don't want to get a dog that, is not used to
Couch
running
potato.
yeah, exactly. A breed like that. So with that being said, take a look at all the breeds out there, and then, choose one, based on the breed generalization that more fits your lifestyle. However, with that said, even though we do have our breed generalizations, not every dog is going to be, what that breed says it's going to be. Like each dog is an individual. Each dog has their own personality, just like we humans do.
Right.
Okay, so you may not get a German Shepherd that likes to chase tennis balls. That'd be rare, but you may find one that's like, I don't care about tennis balls. And
Right.
you also may not find a Basset Hound that wants to chill out. You may find a Basset Hound that wants to go chase everything. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind. Like, and this is a huge misconception sometimes, that people think the smaller the dog,
Hmm.
the less energy they're going to have, the less, whatever they're going to do. So,
Right.
we talk about miniature breeds, and I can tell you from experience that I know many miniatures, but I know one in particular that, he will bounce off the walls if you let him, and he
Oh yeah.
loves those running along the bike rides and stuff. So, just keep in mind that each dog has their own personality. So as
Right.
you go to pick out your dog, take a look at their personality and like, okay, this one may not be the best for me. They have a lot of energy. They need to be with someone that, can expend that energy. This one
Right.
over here, may be better for me in my lifestyle. So be honest with yourself when you're doing that.
Mm, yeah, I like that. Be honest with yourself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's very important. Um, okay, awesome. Uh, okay, as a professional trainer, what is the most common question that your clients ask you about puppy behavior?
Oh yeah. So puppies. All right. So well, people ask a lot of questions about puppies, but I'd say the number one that I get asked on a routine basis is, my puppy is biting me. It won't stop biting me. How do I get it to stop biting me? It's biting everything. And they're talking about the puppy that's biting their pant legs, and they got scratches all up and down their arms and their legs from the puppy. So with this, I kind of want to look at where this type of behavior came from. Okay, and this behavior originates with the puppy litter. And in the litter, they're going to learn a lot of lessons from their litter mates and their mother. Okay, so with their litter mates, they're going to nibble at each other, bite each other. That's how they play with each other. But with the mother, the mother understands what her role is with those puppies, and it's to, guide them and lead them, not be their friend. So
Mm,
you'll find a lot of times if you have the puppies chewing on the mother is going to tell them to stop, right? And dogs are nonverbal creatures, so how is she going to tell them to stop? She's going to growl at them. She may snap at them. She may snarl at them, and the puppies understand that and they back off. So when the puppy comes home with us, they're trying to learn about how they can interact with us and our family, right? So from day one, like we talked about earlier, day one, I want to make sure I don't allow that behavior to come along with my puppy. So how I take care of this behavior is redirection. Okay, so I want to, if the puppy's coming at me, to try and nibble at me or bite me, I'm going to pick up something that I want the puppy to have. That could be like a chew, could be a toy, a self-entertainment toy, and I'm going to give that to the puppy rather than chew on me. Here is something
mm.
for you to chew on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Um, and then also, if it continues, I'm just going to have my leash because we have that supervision. We're not allowing the puppy to wander around, so I have my leash. I'm just going to use the leash to kind of keep the puppy away from me, and then and then redirect the puppy over there. So whatever the puppy practices is what they're going to do. So if they're able to practice chewing on me and chewing on my clothes and scratching me and biting me, they're going to continue to do that until I get so fed up to the point where I then begin to redirect them. But if I start it from day one, right,
Right.
it's a lot easier in the at the long goal there. So yeah.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but so do you use the leash opposed to like putting, your hands and moving them with your hands so that they don't, because you always associate your touch with like a positive,
Oh yeah.
like a reward sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So
definitely.
you
Yep.
use the leash to pull them away opposed
Exactly.
to your hands, right?
Yeah, exactly. I want physical touch to be one of the primary rewards that I can give my dog, right? So if I'm grabbing my dog, pushing my dog, hitting my dog, kicking all these things physically with my body, I
Yeah.
can degrade that reward for the dog, my physical touch reward, and also it's not going to, develop a good relationship with my dog. So I want to use the leash as my line of signaling with the dog, where I can move them away from me without actually having to touch them in a negative way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's cool. Smart. Okay, so thank you for answering those questions. That's kind of like, prepping your mind, prepping your home for, getting into the mindset of bringing home a new puppy or a new dog.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, but what we also did was we took a poll last week asking what types of unwanted behavior do you see in your dog that you'd like to solve? And I think there were a few options out there, but by far the most popular ones were, my dog won't stop pulling on the leash, always, right?
Oh
My
yeah.
dog won't stop jumping, and my dog is having destructive behavior when they're left alone. So
Okay.
let's dive in to that first one. 5 people who voted on this, or sorry, there were 5 people who voted saying they're having trouble with leash pulling. What do you, can you hear me?
You got me?
I can hear you. Did you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I heard you said you got 5 people asking about leash pulling.
Yes. What
Okay.
would you recommend?
Okay, yeah. So for leash pulling, well, first off, as with any dog behavior, from my perspective, I kind of want to understand why this behavior may be happening. Okay, so I can get to the foundational roots of the behavior and how to, really rehabilitate that behavior. So if we're talking about leash pulling, this really starts off with opposition reflex. Okay, and we all have opposition reflex. So do our dogs. So opposition reflex is if I were to push you or pull you a certain way, your natural tendency would be to move against that force, right? So with our dogs, if I put a leash on them and I apply tension to that leash, even if they're just sniffing around and tension is applied, they're going to start pulling against that, so they're getting pulled back. They're like, hey, I'm going this way, so um, with that being said, that opposition reflex can develop into leash pulling, all right?
Mm.
And as that develops, leash pulling can become self-reinforcing to the dog. And what I mean by self-reinforcing is that it feels good to the dog to pull on a leash. And that's due to the chemicals that are released in the dog's brain as this is happening. Yeah, specifically adrenaline and
Mm.
endorphins, and we've all felt adrenaline ourselves before. You can feel that, going down a roller coaster, that rush that you get at just coursing through your body. You're like, yeah, this is fun for most
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So your dog is feeling that, right? And I'm sure we've all seen, the classic lab that's walking down the street, pulling their owner
Who's
down the
walking
street.
who?
Yeah, exactly. Pulling the owner down the street, choking himself out, and he's
Hmm.
having a good time. He's not
Yep.
stopping,
Exactly.
and you would think like, hey, why isn't he stopping? It's because that chemical release in his brain feels good.
Right.
So with that being said, I personally like to desensitize opposition reflex in relation to, like walking on a loose leash. Okay, so how do I do that? First things first, just like we talked about preparing the home, we want to make sure that we have a leash and collar that the dog cannot slip out of, right? So if I have flat collars are notorious for this, but if I had a flat collar, the dog can twist their head a certain way and get out of that flat collar and they're gone.
Right.
So a slip lead can work very well. There's a bunch of other training collars that can be used for this. And then I usually have a 4 or 5 or 6 foot leash that I, hold in my hand. All right. So also I'm going to have some high value food rewards to provide to my dog to reward the good behavior. Okay, and I'll pause here for a second and I'll just make a very important note that whatever behaviors that your dog is showing or demonstrating that you want and you reward those behaviors are going to continue to happen in the future. All right, whatever behaviors your dog is showing you that are undesirable or unwanted, if you ignore and correct those behaviors will stop down the future. Okay, so we'll touch on that a little bit later, but that's the main premise behind this. So I've got my high value food rewards, and I can have those in my pocket. I could have it in a bait bag, around my waist, whatever works best for you. I've
Right.
got my leash, right? I've got my leash in my right hand, my food in my left hand. I may have like 1 to 3 pieces of food in my left hand, and I'm going to start walking in a straight line. All right, and I'm keeping in a straight line so that I can control the vectors that the dog's moving, and the dog is going to be moving all kinds of ways around me. So let's say I start walking, and my dog comes up, and they blow right past me. All
Mm.
right, I'm going to immediately turn around and continue to walk on that straight line the other direction. Right, so the dog blows past me, I turn around, I keep walking. The dog's like, hey, what the heck? We're going this way now, So
Right.
then he starts following me. All
Right.
right. At the same time, I'm going to have that food in my left hand, and this food is typically about 1.5 inch pieces of food. Okay. And I'm going to stick that down the left seam of my pants. All right. So I stick that food down the left seam of my pants to where the dog can get to it if they come up to my left side, right? So the dog comes up to my left side. They're like, hey, you got something in there. I'm like, yeah.
Mm.
I'm like, good boy, good boy, good girl. I open up my hand and give them the food. Okay, so I've just rewarded the good behavior of staying next to me.
Mm.
Okay, then if the dog goes past me again, I turn around and I repeat the process over and over and over as needed. Okay, a note on this is that this is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to solve this in 3 minutes.
Right.
You got to have that consistency and repetition when you're
Right.
doing this with your dog. So, practice makes perfect. So practice as much as possible. with your dog and keep it very rewarding for your dog. But as time goes on in that straight line, you're able to walk with your dog with no issues. Then you start to go to other areas of the neighborhood, down to
Mm,
the park, so on and so forth, and practice in those areas as well. And you just desensitize the dog to any environmentals, and you continue to reinforce and reward that behavior of staying next to you. And I use my left side. You could use your right side. It's up to you.
right.
But yeah, that's generally how I work with dogs that are pulling on the leash. So just keep in mind, opposition reflex is in play. So you've got to desensitize that opposition reflex.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely, having a dog walking company, like one of the most common things we come across. Like,
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
it's the most frustrating thing, even
Yeah,
having dogs myself, like who, as you
yeah,
know, pull, and it's like, what do I do? So
yeah.
definitely investing in professional help is the best thing you can do because it's just hard.
Yeah, I've known a couple ladies I've worked with who were actually going to the chiropractor because they may have had a
Wow.
pit bull or a big lab that was pulling them around. They were going to the chiropractor, and
Yep.
we were able to teach their dog, hey, walk next to you instead of pulling you around. And
Wow.
now they can walk around with a cup of coffee in their hands,
Yeah.
and you know how that is. They can walk around with a cup of coffee in their hands, this big old pit bull next to them, and hey,
It's
no
a game
issues,
changer. It's
Yeah,
a game
exactly,
changer. Yeah, for sure.
exactly. So.
Whew. Like when you feel what it feels like to walk with your dog, not pulling, it's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Um, so okay, so we had, let me count here. I think so. We had two people say that their pups are jumping like crazy, and what can they do?
Okay, yeah. So
Help
jumping again. Okay, gotcha. So yeah, jumping again. I want to look at why this issue may be happening. Okay, so first of all, when it comes to jumping, I look back at the dog's ancestors, which is the wolf. All right, and the natural dog pack, natural wolf pack. Why would a puppy or a dog be jumping in that environment? All right, and the answer is after the mature members of the pack would return from a hunt, the puppies would jump up on them and lick their lips to initiate a regurgitation of food so that the puppies could eat, kind of crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, but so that's the very basis of why the jumping behavior starts, all right? Then you mix that with some excitement and you're coming home and hey, or anybody
Exactly.
greeting your dog, overly excited. Your dog is, again, it's got that instinctual jumping and then also it's excited, so it just feeds into that behavior.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? Your physical touch should always be a reward for your dog, at least in the way that I train the dog. So, with that being said, you may have heard of the old trick of, hey, just knee the dog in the chest and they'll stop, like I'm not a fan of that because, if I'm doing that, it's number one, going to degrade my relationship. And
Right.
number two, it's going to degrade my physical touch reward for the dog, So, again, with me, I use the leash, right? And I can use the leash to keep the dog off of me when they're jumping and ignore that behavior. Okay. Also, when the dog has all four paws on the ground, I can say good, right? Good. And that is rewarding and reinforcing to the dog that, hey, all four paws on the ground get you what you want.
Right.
So if they have all four paws on the ground, I'm going to give them that physical touch reward, or if I have food, could be a food reward. But the second that I start touching them, if they start jumping up again, guess what? I have to withhold that physical touch reward, which can be hard if you're coming home from work, you know. So
Right.
think about it that way. We may need to adjust some of the behaviors that we are doing that fuel these unwanted behaviors. So let's say you come home, your dog's jumping up, you know, no, you ignore them, you walk off to the side with body language. The dog puts all four paws on the ground. Good. You start touching them again, right? Or you start touching them the first time, and the dog stays on the ground. Good boy, good girl. You're rubbing on them, rewarding them for
Right.
that. Then they start jumping up again. You take away the reward, turn around, walk the other way,
Right.
right? So essentially, with body language, and remember that body language is the dog's primary communication method because they're a nonverbal creature. So with body language, you are telling them, hey, you're not getting nothing for that, right?
Right.
That behavior is not allowed in this house.
Right.
And the dogs do get that, you know. But again, it's not going to happen overnight. Consistency and repetition is key. So, you know, let's say you've gone 5 days of doing that. You're ignoring the jumping, using the leash to keep them off you if they're jumping, and rewarding them when all four paws are on the ground. Then on the sixth day, you're like, hey, I just can't stand it. I have to touch them. I just have to hug them if they jump up on me. Guess what?
Right.
You just took 5 steps back. You
Yeah.
know, so the previous 5 days, you might as well just wipe off the books because they didn't matter. You know, so
Right.
keep that in mind. You know, consistency and repetition are key.
Right. Yeah. That's probably the hardest part because I mean we live kind of in a world where everything's like that, you know,
Oh,
or
yeah.
on our phones like that. We have everything like that. And I, even myself, I'm like, I want my dogs like that, you know, to not pull, to not jump. But, you know, you have to be, like you mentioned before, honest with yourself. You have to have the patience, the consistency. Otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're just going to keep having the same issues.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably like, you know, we wish we could hand over a wand and be like, okay, it's over, you know. But unfortunately, we're not here to give you the magic wand because we don't have one. But good advice.
It's all about relationship, you know. Unfortunately, you can't program your dog. You can't plug it into your computer and be like, "Hey, secret code, no jumping." You know, that doesn't work. You have to have a relationship with them. So that's how that works.
Right, which is really neat too. Okay, and then we had one person say that their dog is being destructive when they're left alone. So what can we do about that?
Yeah, so destructiveness usually stems from some type of anxiety, usually a higher level anxiety or even separation anxiety, right? And separation anxiety can be clinical in some cases, which is very serious, right? Any form of anxiety, but especially separation anxiety is obviously unhealthy for your dog and you.
Right.
You know, so we're talking about increased heart rates, you know, the mind can never rest, you know, lots of panting, that kind of thing. So, basically, we want to have a overall calm mindset with our dog. So when it comes to destructiveness in the home, first off, we kind of want to go back to some basics. And those basics may be, you know, going back to utilizing the kennel and providing the dog with a safe den area that they know is their area and that they're safe in. Okay. Also, when this is the case, we want to make sure, just like with the jumping or any other behavior, we do not want to reward any signs of anxiety, but especially separation anxiety. All right. So one way that we can do that is about 15 minutes before we leave the house, put the dog in the kennel, you know, say your goodbyes right then, close the door, and ignore them for 15 minutes before you leave the house. You know, so that's pretty tough to do for most people, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking about treating our dog's anxiety and separation anxiety and, you know, making them a healthier dog and more fulfilled dog. Okay.
Right.
So 15 minutes before I leave, put them in the kennel.
Right.
Give them their self-entertainment toys. Give them whatever you need to give them in there. And then 15 minutes later, you take off. You're going to work, right?
Yeah.
You come home from work or the movies or whatever you're doing, and you come in the house. Your dog may be going crazy in the kennel, like, hey, you're home, right?
Right.
So instead of feeding into that behavior, right, and you can feed into that behavior by looking at your dog, you know, talking to your dog, touching your dog, all those are going to feed into that behavior, which we don't want to do. We want to extinct or get rid of the anxious and hyperactive behavior. So get in the house, you know, wait a minimum of 15 minutes, completely ignore your dog, act like they're not even there. You know, and the first time you do this, your dog's going to be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
What's going on? You know?
It's so hard.
Yeah, so 15 minutes, and then after that time period is over, you can go and let your dog out the kennel and begin to interact with them. But with that said, let's say the 15 minutes is over, and your dog is still being anxious, still, you know, displaying hyperactivity. Don't let him out of the kennel, right? You know, wait until they're calm. So as soon as they're calm, good. You walk over there, open up the kennel, you know, and let them out at that point. But let's say, for example, and this is pretty common, you know, you're home for 15 minutes, the dog is calm. Then you start to walk over to the kennel, and the dog hops up, you know, they start bouncing off the walls of the kennel. Guess what? Turn around, walk back the other way. You know, you have to reinforce that calm mindset. All right. And there's been plenty of dogs that I've worked with that were on some type of and our guest is back, but they were on some type of, you know,
And we got one
medication.
viewer.
Yeah, there's been plenty of dogs, you know, that I work with that were on some type of medication, you know, for anxiety or separation anxiety,
Right.
or insecurity or for aggression or anything like that. And that's not getting to the root of the problem. You
Right.
know, it's not really rehabilitating that dog with that behavioral issue. So by doing it this way, by providing a structure for the dog and some boundaries, you know, we can
Right.
really
Exactly.
instinctually speak to the dog and with that truly cure anxiety, hyperactivity, separation anxiety, insecurity, aggression, all the above, you
Right.
know, simply by, you know, setting a structure, setting some house rules like we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
and sticking to those.
Right.
So, but there you
Right.
go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can share a little personal story, quick story about Chibi, who some of you may know, one of my little mini schnauzers. Every time I'd come home, oh my gosh, Chibi, you're home. You know, I'm home, blah, blah, blah. And he's doing like Zumba with his hips, you know, wiggling everywhere. And I would leave. Oh my gosh, Chibi, I have to leave. I love you. I love you. I love you. And all of a sudden, now he's licking his paws. He's peeing on the floor. He's marking the house. And I'm like, oh, pump the brakes. Like, this is not good.
Yeah.
You know, speaking with you, speaking with other trainers, saying, do not, when you walk in the house, don't make a big deal. When you leave the house, don't make a big deal. You know,
Yep.
address him only when he's calm.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was like that. Like, he stopped peeing. And I was like, this was the best advice. But I do understand, and I'm sure you understand even more, that, you know, everyone has a different situation. Their dog, you know, comes from, if they rescued it, from a different walk of life. So, you know, there's going to be different questions that arise. Wow, that bird is so loud.
Got some more friends over here.
Okay, so wrapping this up this evening with the final question, or if you could leave our audience with one last piece of advice, what would it be?
Okay, so yeah, so last piece of advice for anybody out there, it's more like a two-part piece of advice here for you. But the first piece is, you know, I want, you know, for every dog out there and every dog owner out there, I want you to be able to fulfill your dog's, you know, very basic instinctual needs, right? So those needs are daily exercise, you know, and some type of mental stimulation, you know. And if we provide these to our dogs on a regular basis, you know, we can actually prolong the life of our dog because our dogs are more active, they're with us, and their minds are always at work, you know. So
Right.
I'm a firm believer in that. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about daily exercise is I'm not talking about just putting your dog in the backyard for an hour, letting them run around, do their thing, right?
Right.
That is not truly exercising your dog. That can actually increase anxiety or insecurity in your dog because they have no job to do. They're just in the backyard doing whatever. All right. What I'm talking about is some type of structured regimen that you can do with your dog, such as walking, you know, riding a bike with your dog, rollerblading with your dog,
Right.
playing a game of focused fetch where you're throwing out a ball or something or frisbee, and your dog brings it directly back to you and drops it for you, and you throw it again. That's like sprints for us, but
Yeah.
one of the above for those, you know, and I hate sprints, you know. So one of the above for those, you know, for structured exercise. All right.
Yep.
And then we talk about mental stimulation, right? So for me personally, mental stimulation comes in the form of some type of obedience work or problem solving work or, you know, some type of, you know, nose work, something like that. But basically, for the everyday person, you know, that could be something as simple as, you know, saying, hey, you know, today I'm going to work on a down with my dog, you
Right.
know, and then I'm going to mark and reward the steps to get my dog to down. You know, I could also use luring if I need to, but if I want a more advanced behavior, like a down stay, I'm going to break that up into a couple parts, right? First, you have to have a down, then you can start to work on a stay, right? It just doesn't
Right.
happen
Right.
overnight either. So consistency is key. But for me, the dog owners that I work with, I recommend that they spend a minimum of 15 minutes per day working with their dog in a mental stimulation fashion. And
Yep.
then I recommend that they spend, you know, a minimum of an hour per day exercising their dog. And that could be, you know, 2 30-minute walks, one in the morning, one in the evening. Could be, you
Right.
know, some treadmill time, you know, whatever works for you and your dog and your schedule. Okay.
Right.
But by doing those two, we can fulfill the very, very basic instinctual needs of our dog. All right. And then the second part to what I'll leave you with is socialization. Okay,
Mm.
and there's a lot of misconceptions out there about socialization. There's a
Mm.
lot of myths about socialization. You know, one of the most common misconceptions is, hey, socialization means I take my dog, you know, everywhere. I let them interact with every single person. I take
Right.
them to the dog park. I let them interact with every dog there. And that could not be further from the truth. And I'll tell you why. And that's because the way that you perceive the world and the way that your dog perceives the world are two completely different ways, right? So
Yep.
for us, for humans, right, smiling at each other is a positive greeting, a good gesture, you know.
Right.
But if you have your dog, you know, with people around and someone bends over and says, "Hey, how you doing, little buddy?" You know, smiling at them, you know, that dog could perceive that as some form of aggression, you
Right.
know, and it could spawn insecurity or aggressive tendencies or reactivity or something like that. So um, that's why, you know, that type of socialization just doesn't work, you know, but also allowing your dog to interact with other dogs in an open, unstructured environment, you know,
Right.
taking them to down to the park and there's a bunch of dogs there, your dog shows up and then it gets attacked by two dogs or
Yep.
whatever, right? That can cause dog reactivity, dog aggression, you know. So what we want to do as far as socialization goes is provide our dog, our puppy, you know, with positive experiences in close proximity to these other people, places, and things. And when you're doing socialization work, neutral people and dogs are your best friends. And what I mean by neutral people are
Right.
is those people that don't care about your dog. They walk by, they're like, "Oh, dog," you know, or
Yeah.
those dogs that are just walking by, they're like, "Hey, it's another furry guy. We're just gonna keep walking," you know. So
Exactly.
those are your best friends. You can get very close to them without, you know, them interrupting your socialization session. And for socialization work, you know, I'm using high value food rewards for that. I'm marking good behaviors. I'm rewarding that. I'm marking and rewarding sustained eye contact, sustained focus on me, because I want the dog to have a positive experience with me, but aware of everything else that is going on around us, right?
Right.
So I might go down to Lowe's, for example, because dogs come in there, people come in there, you got loud noises. And I may just walk through the store, give my dog food, having a good time, and there's forklifts going off, beep, beep, you know, and
Right.
dogs walking by and carts going by and all kinds of things, you know.
Right.
So yeah, but socialization is not just for puppies, right? It is very important for puppies. However, it should be continued throughout the life of our dog, right? So even a 14-year-old dog should be doing some socialization, and that can be part of your mental stimulation for your dog, you know, which can
Right.
prolong your dog's life. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's really, really, really good information because that's like the biggest misconception I feel like with socialization. I'm going to take my dog to Sullivan's Island and just let them run on the beach and, you know, or
Yeah.
dog daycare for 5 days in a row or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. And it could be a traumatic experience.
Oh yeah.
Almost,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and just overdrive. It's like, think of yourself. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
That's my little,
Having a
sorry.
good time.
Hold on.
No, you're good. You're good.
This is what we call live, right?
Some
But
real live sound effects there.
yeah, see, he wants his Kong and he's like scratching at it.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? That, imagine ourselves in a room with 20 of our friends for 12 hours, you know, in our bedroom, just stuck
Oh, yeah.
there. And it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
whoa, like overdrive. So I like
Yeah.
that you bring up that structured exercise, the regimen. But it's hard because we all have busy lives. We work crazy hours. And there's definitely opportunities for us, you know, maybe it's, you know, doggy daycare here or there, or it's training. But it is a commitment. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It definitely is.
it
Definitely
is. And
And
yeah.
you know, at the end of the day, you know, a nice walk with your dog when you get home from work, you know, that's a bonding process. So you're bonding with your dog, but it can also be calming for you. You know, I know if I'm having a stressful day, I'm like, all right, Bane, You
Yeah.
know, my Doberman, I'm like, let's go, 3 hour walk, let's go, just clear our minds, you know, clean the slate, you know. And I
Yeah.
get back from that walk, he's like, hey, you know, let's play ball. I'm like, dude, we just walked 3 miles, you
Oh
know,
my
so,
God.
so,
Jeez.
but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome because I think with leash pulling being such a big issue,
Oh yeah.
you know, we don't enjoy it when our dogs are
Yeah.
pulling on the leash. So of course we're not going to want to walk 30 minutes with our dog. We're like,
Yeah.
oh man, like let's just go outside so you can go to the bathroom and then we'll like
Yeah.
play inside. And it's just not the same. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, anyone watching this video, if you need any help, any resources on, you know, if your goal is just to enjoy an evening walk with your dog, get in contact with Canine Revolution Dog Training because they can help you achieve that. And then honestly build that bond between, you know, just a stronger bond between you and your pet.
Yeah.
And Chad, thank you so much for being here. You know, no one's watching right now, but definitely going to put this out into his different Facebook groups and have a blog. So this is here always for people to refer back to. There's a lot of good information in here. And thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And enjoy your evening.
All right, you too. We'll see
Thanks,
y'all later.
Chad. Alrighty, bye.
All right, bye.